27, I opened my mother's final letter, expecting closure, maybe even love. What I found instead was a promise. There is a legacy waiting for you. Heart pounding, I turned to the one person I still trusted, my sister Emily. I asked for her help, just to see if she had changed. She looked me dead in the eye and slid a forged letter across the table. Mom only kept you around out of pity, and soon you'll have nothing. Then she took Mom's locket, the one thing I had left, and walked out like I was nobody. But what crushed me more? She was right. Because when I turned to the lawyer, I found out Emily was named my legal guardian, not in love, in legacy. And yet, something she said haunts me still. These things have a way of disappearing. The lamp flickered. My hands trembled on the letter. If you've ever begged for love and been handed betrayal, don't scroll. Drop a comment, I feel you, and keep watching. Funny how one forged note can unlock every memory you wish you'd buried. 2 months earlier. My name is Maya Sterling, and I've always been the shadow in my own family. I'm 27 now, living in a cramped apartment above a bait shop in a coastal Maine town where the air smells of salt and gossip. People here don't just talk, they dissect every detail until it's barely recognizable. I've learned to keep my head down, to blend in with the fog that rolls in off the Atlantic. It's safer that way, but I wasn't always this invisible. Or maybe I was, even as a child. I remember being 10 years old when my parents split. No big fights in front of me, no shattering plates or screaming matches, just Dad's voice low and tight, Mom's eyes like frozen glass, and the next morning his suitcase gone. He left me with Mom and Emily, my older sister. Emily, who was golden in Mom's eyes, the girl who could do no wrong. I was the quiet one, the dreamer with smudged ink on my fingers and day-old hair, forever scribbling in a notebook instead of making myself useful. Emily had this smile, wide and polished, the kind people lean toward. I envied her confidence, but I learned early that it wasn't for me. Mom's gaze would soften at Emily's jokes, but when she turned to me, it was different, assessing, impatient. I used to think if I just wrote the right story, she'd see me. She never did. The memory that still cuts deepest happened when I was 15. I had been saving every dollar I could, babysitting, walking dogs, sweeping floors at the old diner, for a trip to New York. I wanted to see the publishing houses, breathe in the streets where real writers walked. I kept my savings in a big glass jar under my bed, coins and bills stacked neatly. One evening, I came home from the library and heard the faint clink of coins upstairs. I crept into my room and froze. Mom was kneeling by my bed, her hand buried in the jar. She didn't flinch when she saw me, just straightened, clutching the cash, and said with this flat certainty, "She needs it more, Maya." Emily was leaning against the doorframe, smirking like she'd just won something. "It's for my car," she said. "I'll give you a ride sometime." The humiliation burned in my throat. I wanted to scream, to snatch the jar back, but my voice felt locked away. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my fingers curled around my notebook. It was the only thing they couldn't take from me. Years passed, and the pattern stayed the same. Emily soared, college, boyfriends who bought her jewelry, a nice condo downtown. I poured coffee for tourists at a rundown shop with a flickering neon sign, my tips just enough to cover rent and instant noodles. I still wrote, filling page after page in the same worn notebook, but I learned to keep it hidden. If Mom ever caught me, she'd laugh and call it another one of your delusions. Then, 2 months ago, Mom died. No warning, no final words, just a phone call from Emily while I was on my lunch break. The funeral was small, the air thick with lilies and silence. I stood beside Emily, both of us in black, but it felt like we were mourning different people. Emily cried loud, theatrical sobs. I felt something quieter, heavier, grief tangled with years of unhealed wounds. After the burial, I went back to my apartment. The fog was thick that evening, pressing against the windows like it wanted to come inside. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the chipped mug in my hands, when I noticed the envelope. It had been slipped under my door, the paper yellowed, my name written in Mom's looping, unmistakable handwriting. My heart stumbled in my chest. I ran my fingers over the faded ink, the paper soft with age. The seal cracked with a faint sigh, and inside was a single sheet. The message was short, almost cryptic. There is a legacy waiting for you. Find it at the old house. It's time. No explanation, no apology. Just those words. The old house could only mean Grandma's Victorian place on the edge of town, the one that's been empty since she passed. I hadn't been there in years. Its sagging porch and peeling paint felt like part of another life. But why now? Why would Mom, who spent my whole life reminding me I was second best, leave me a legacy? I read the letter again, the words blurring as the ocean wind rattled my window. My stomach tightened with a strange mix of hope and dread. Hope that maybe, finally, I mattered. Dread that this was just another game, another way for her to remind me of my place. I could almost hear her voice in my head from that night so many years ago. "Emily deserves it more, Maya." The words still scraped against my ribs like broken glass. The sea was loud that night, waves crashing against the rocks below town. I sat there for hours, the letter on the table between my hands, my notebook open but blank beside it. I kept tracing the letters of my name, as if they might change, as if the paper might tell me more if I touched it long enough. All my life, I've been the invisible one. Could this letter finally prove I matter? Or was I about to walk into something I couldn't undo? Outside, the fog swallowed the streetlights, and the town lay quiet, holding its secrets close. I pressed the letter flat, my fingers trembling. Whatever this legacy was, I needed to see it for myself. But as I turned off the light and crawled into bed, the unease didn't fade. If Mom wanted to leave me something, why didn't she just say so before she died? Why hide it in the dust and shadows of the old house? Sleep didn't come easily. My dreams were restless, full of creaking floorboards and voices I couldn't quite hear. And when I woke to the gray dawn spilling through my curtains, the letter was still there on the table, waiting. I didn't know it yet, but that faded envelope had just opened a door I couldn't close. The letter hasn't left my hands since last night. Its edges are soft, almost fraying, the creases deep from where I've folded and unfolded it over and over, as if the repetition might unlock something hidden in the fibers. The paper feels warm from my grip, but every time I loosen my hold, the air in my apartment seems to cool. I can still catch the faintest trace of my mother's perfume clinging to it, light, floral, the kind she only wore on Sundays when she dressed for church. That scent is like a ghost in the room, drifting in and out, impossible to pin down. I pace the length of my apartment, bare feet pressing into the uneven wood floor, each step coaxing a different creak from the boards. Outside, the fog hangs low and heavy, turning the street into a pale, shifting wall. The light filtering through the blinds is weak and gray, unable to cut through the gloom. My reflection in the window is faint, like even the glass wants to hide me. I read the words again, slower this time, my eyes tracing each letter with care. There is a legacy waiting for you. Find it at the old house. It's time. No, I love you. No explanation. No sign-off except for her handwriting on the envelope, smooth, practiced, the way she signed school permission slips and grocery lists. My thumb brushes over my name, the way it loops and curves, and it feels like touching a bruise I can't stop pressing. Could it be real? A legacy? For me? After years of being the one left behind, the one who got the hand-me-downs and the explanations that weren't really explanations, could she have actually left me something? For a moment, the thought blooms warm in my chest, but suspicion crushes it before it can take root. If she wanted to give me something, why keep it a secret? Why not tell me herself? Why wait until now, when she's gone and the silence between us can't be broken? The sudden buzz of my phone on the counter jolts me. I glance at the screen, and my stomach tightens. Emily. The name alone sends a wave of unease through me. I let it ring once, twice, weighing my options. She'll know if I ignore her. She always does. I swipe to accept, forcing my voice to stay even. Hey! Her face fills the screen, framed by the clean white lines of her condo. Behind her, sunlight pours across gleaming marble countertops and a vase of perfect lilies, their petals wide and still, like they've been placed just so for the call. Emily herself looks like she belongs in one of those glossy lifestyle magazines. Hair smooth, makeup flawless, wearing that particular smile that has always made people lean closer. "Maya," she says, her voice warm in a way that feels practiced. "I just heard from the lawyer about Mom's arrangements. So, You got a letter? The words knock something loose in me. How does she know? I blink, my face staying still even as my pulse kicks. Yeah, I did. She tilts her head slightly, studying me the way someone studies a puzzle. That's great. We should look for this legacy together, sis. It's what Mom would want. The way she says together makes my skin prickle. Emily doesn't do together unless it leads her somewhere she wants to be. I manage a small smile. Maybe, I haven't decided yet. Her gaze shifts, not long, just a flicker, sliding away from mine before snapping back, the tiniest crack in her performance. Come on, Maya, she says, her tone syrupy, coaxing. We can make a day of it, just like old times. Old times. The image slams into me. 15 years old, standing in my bedroom doorway, watching Mom empty my savings jar into her hands while Emily leaned there smirking. Those are the old times she's thinking of. I let the silence stretch, too heavy to be comfortable. She fills it, as I knew she would. When were you thinking of going? I could clear my schedule. There it is. Too quick, too eager. Emily has never cleared her schedule for me, not once in my life. I study her face on the screen. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. She's never cared before, so why now? I'll let you know, I say at last, my voice light but my heart pounding. Her expression shifts, barely, but I catch it. Okay, just don't wait too long. These things have a way of disappearing. The call ends abruptly, leaving my reflection in the black screen staring back at me, pale and tense. I realize my hand is still clutching the letter, my knuckles white. Her words linger, carrying a quiet warning I can't quite unpack, disappearing. Did she mean the legacy itself, or something more? I set the phone down on the counter and sink into the chair at my kitchen table. The lamp beside me hums faintly, the bulb casting a yellow glow that falters every few seconds, throwing restless shadows against the walls. I trace the loops of my mother's handwriting again, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. My thoughts spiral. Emily's sudden interest, her tone sticky sweet in a way that's more trap than comfort. That split-second glance away. She's hiding something. I don't know what, but I can feel it, sharp and certain as a splinter under the skin. The old house flashes in my mind. Grandma's Victorian on the edge of town, its once bright paint now flaking away to gray. I can almost hear the moan of its porch steps, the slow settling of the beams, smell the dry, stale scent of wood closed up too long. Whatever's there, Mom wanted me to find it, and if Emily wants it this badly, then I need to get there before she does. The decision comes over me like a slow snowfall, quiet, cold, and unshakable. I'll go alone. No warning, no invitation. Just me, the letter, and the truth waiting behind those doors. Still, unease twists in my gut. Emily's eagerness wasn't casual, it was calculated. What is she so desperate for me not to find? Or is she hoping to be there when I do, so she can take it first? I stand, tucking the letter carefully into the worn notebook I've had since I was 15. Its pages are crammed with stories, scribbled dreams no one else has ever read. It feels right to hide the letter there, between the words that have always been mine alone. Outside, the fog presses against the window, thicker now, swirling in slow eddies like it's alive and listening. The hum of the fridge fills the quiet, each sound in the apartment suddenly too loud. Tomorrow I'll go, alone. And if Emily tries to follow, I'll be ready. The old Victorian rose from the overgrown lawn like a half-forgotten memory, its silhouette jagged against a sky the color of wet slate. What paint remained was blistered and peeling, clinging to the siding in stubborn patches. The porch sagged in the middle, boards warped from years of coastal storms battering them. The air was heavy with salt and damp, and the wind carried the faint tang of seaweed from the shore. Each step up the porch let out a groan that sank into the thick, humid air. My palm hovered above the tarnished brass doorknob, the metal dim under layers of grime. A sour smell leaked through the cracked wood, mold and mildew, deep and wet like a basement after a flood. I hesitated, my fingertips brushing the knob, feeling the cold seep into my skin. This had been Grandma's home, but it didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt hollow, like the walls were holding their breath. The door opened with a slow, reluctant whine. A narrow hallway stretched out before me, lined with faded floral wallpaper curling away at the seams. The carpet beneath my feet swallowed my steps, muffling them into silence, but each movement sent tiny clouds of dust swirling in the cone of my flashlight beam. The air inside was thicker, mold overlaid with something faintly metallic, like rusted pipes or old coins. I moved from room to room, my light sweeping over relics frozen in time. A cracked teacup still sat on the dining table, a thin film of dust over its lip. An old clock on the wall had stopped at 2:17, its second hand forever mid-tick. On the hallway table, a pile of unopened mail lay slumped against the wall, the envelopes yellowed and curled. Everything looked abandoned, yet nothing felt entirely still. My gaze kept drifting upward, to the narrow staircase that led to the attic. The banister was smooth under my hand, the varnish worn away in places where fingers had passed over it for decades. Each step gave a protesting groan, the sound echoing faintly through the empty house. The air grew warmer as I climbed, heavier with the scent of dust so thick it scratched at the back of my throat. At the top, the attic door resisted me, the swollen wood sticking in the frame. I leaned into it with my shoulder until it gave, swinging open with a reluctant moan. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, catching on low rafters webbed with cobwebs, stacks of boxes leaning against the walls, and old furniture swaddled in yellowed sheets. The smell was suffocating: mold, insulation fibers, and the stale air of a room that hadn't been opened in years. I stepped carefully across the uneven boards, my weight making the floor complain underfoot. In the far corner, I noticed a place where the planks didn't sit quite right, an uneven seam barely visible under the dust. My pulse quickened. I crouched, brushing away the grime, my fingers catching on the edge of a warped plank. It resisted at first, creaking in protest as I worked my nails and then the edge of my crowbar into the gap. My shoulders ached from the effort, but finally the board lifted with a low, splintering groan. Beneath it, nestled in shadow, was a small iron box. My breath hitched. I reached for it, my hands brushing the rough, pitted surface. The metal was ice cold, the latch rusted but still strong. Digging into my bag, I pulled out the small crowbar I'd brought, not because I expected treasure, but because something about this place made me feel I should be ready for anything. The tip wedged under the latch with a metallic scrape, and with one sharp twist, the lock snapped. Inside, a brittle envelope rested on top of a folded document, both wrapped in parchment so yellowed it felt fragile under my fingertips. My hands trembled as I slid the paper free and unfolded it. It was a property deed, not just any deed, a downtown plot worth over $1 million. My name was printed clearly at the top, the legal language unshakable. I was the sole heir. I stared at the page until the letters blurred. The weight of it was unreal, pressing into my palms like something far heavier than paper. Mom, the woman who had spent my entire life reminding me I wasn't enough, had left me this? Not Emily? My mind rejected it even as my eyes confirmed it. It felt like an error, or worse, a cruel joke. Somewhere deep in my memory, Mom's voice rose, cold and certain. "You'll never amount to much, Maya." That was the voice I knew, the one that had shaped me, not the kind of voice that left $1-million inheritances. The sound came suddenly, slicing through my thoughts. Footsteps, slow, heavy, downstairs. The air in the attic seemed to drain away, leaving me weightless and cold. My heartbeat roared in my ears. Another creak followed, 2, 3 steps, and then silence. I switched off my flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. My breathing slowed to shallow sips of air as I strained to listen. A faint scrape followed, like a shoe shifting against wood. My mind raced. Emily? No, she wouldn't sneak. A neighbor? No one came here. Then who? A shadow moved across the dim rectangle of light spilling from the stairwell. I froze. The deed clutched tight against my chest. My arms locked. The steps stopped. No voice called out. The house fell into an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of my own heartbeat. I stood there, counting in my head until the numbers lost their order, my legs cramping from staying still. Slowly, I edged toward the attic door, peering down. The hallway was empty. The front door was still closed. Yet the feeling that I wasn't alone clung to me, thick as the dust in the air. My fingers shook as I slid the deed back into the box and snapped it shut, tucking it under my arm. My eyes kept darting to the corners where shadows pooled, every flicker of movement in the dust setting my nerves alight. Mom chose me? This can't be right, and whoever had been downstairs, they knew I was here. I arrived at the house long before Emily was due. The sky was a dull, washed-out gray, and the morning fog clung stubbornly to the yard, blurring the hedgerow into a shapeless wall. The grass was slick under my boots, each step releasing the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Inside, the air was sharp with cold, the kind that settled in your bones, as if the walls had stored the night's chill and refused to let it go. I moved quickly, the wooden floor moaning under my weight as I carried the iron box and deed upstairs. My hands were stiff from the cold, but I forced them to work, tucking both deep into the back of a closet. I piled moth-eaten blankets over them, the fabric brittle and powdery with age, until they disappeared entirely from view. The small click of the latch sounded louder than it should have in the empty house. If Emily was coming here with an agenda, she wouldn't find what she was looking for. This wasn't about showing her the truth. It was about seeing what she would do if she thought I had nothing at all. Back downstairs, I lit the small lamp in the living room. Its yellow light struggled against the shadows, barely reaching the corners. Dust clung to every surface, settling thick over the shelves crowded with old photographs. Wedding portraits, vacation snapshots bleached by years in the sun, awkward school pictures. In every one, Emily's smile beamed wide and easy, while mine looked hesitant, the edges forced just enough to pass as happy. The floorboards on the porch let out a familiar, drawn-out groan, and I drew in a slow breath. I smoothed my sweater, the fabric soft but doing nothing to still the thrum in my chest. Emily didn't knock. She stepped inside like she owned the place. "So," she said, brushing her hair back in that calculated way she had, "did you find anything?" Her eyes darted over the room before they landed on me, scanning the shelves, the floor, the corners, as if she were cataloging it all. "Nothing," I said, my voice even. "Just dust and junk." I nodded toward a stack of boxes in the corner. "Most of it's worthless." Her smile was polite, but her eyes stayed flat. She stepped closer, dragging a finger across the dusty coffee table, leaving a clean line in the gray film. Shame. Mom made it sound like there was something important here. "Maybe she just wanted us to clean the place," I said, forcing a small laugh that sounded thin even to me. Her gaze lingered on me for a beat too long, and then she reached into her bag. "I found something, though." She pulled out a folded piece of paper, laying it on the table between us and sliding it forward with 2 fingers, like a dealer pushing a card across a felt table. I picked it up, the texture rough against my fingertips. At first glance, the handwriting looked like Mom's, but the loops were too neat, the pressure too even. The ink was still fresh enough to catch the light. My stomach tightened as I read, "Maya, I'm sorry, but you are unworthy of any legacy. I love you, but Emily will know what to do." I looked up at her. "Where did you get this?" She tilted her head, her expression smooth and unbothered. "It was tucked under a stack of bills in the kitchen. Guess Mom wanted you to see it eventually." My mouth felt dry. "It's not her handwriting." Emily's smile twitched, and then a small, sharp laugh slipped out. She stepped closer, her perfume trailing after her, sweet, almost cloying against the chill in the air. "Mom loved you, but you're a loser. You've always been a loser." She said it with a precision that told me she'd been keeping the words ready, waiting for the perfect moment to use them. The sting was immediate, but familiar. I'd heard versions of it my whole life. I kept my gaze steady. "If that's what you think, why are you here?" She shrugged, eyes glinting. "Maybe I want to make sure you don't screw up what's rightfully mine." Then she drifted past me, scanning the clutter like a hawk circling prey. Her eyes flicked over the mantel, the shelves, the corners, pausing just long enough for me to know she was memorizing the layout. I followed her with my eyes, every step she took scratching against my nerves. When she finally said she had to go, her tone was light, but the way she glanced over her shoulder at the room told me her mind was still working, still calculating. The door shut behind her with a hollow thud, but the air didn't clear. It felt heavier, as though she'd left something behind, invisible but thick enough to breathe in. I sank onto the couch, pressing my fingers into my temples. That's when I noticed the side table. The small silver locket that had been sitting there this morning was gone. Mom's locket. I'd seen it, the chain tangled just the way it always had been, the faint oval outline pressed into the dust where it had rested for who knows how long. Now only that dust outline remained. I moved quickly to the front door, flinging it open. The fog had lifted a little, but the yard was still slick from yesterday's rain. That's when I saw them, boot prints, fresh and deep in the mud, leading away from the porch and veering toward the side of the house. The prints were too large and heavy for Emily's usual heeled boots, but the stride was purposeful, direct. I followed them with my eyes until they disappeared into the shadow of the hedgerow. Her hate feels so raw. Did she take the locket herself? Or is there someone else circling this house, someone moving in the spaces between my steps? The wind shifted, carrying the faint metallic scent from the living room out into the yard. I stepped back inside and locked the door, my hand lingering on the deadbolt. Emily's forged letter lay on the table, its edges curling slightly, her words still sharp in my head. If she could lie this easily, if she could steal something so personal without a second thought, then what else was she willing to do? And why did I have the sinking feeling that the missing locket was only the first piece in whatever game she was playing? The fog was still thick when I made my way down the narrow street to June's house, the kind of fog that rolled over the ground like smoke, shrouding everything in a muted haze. The air smelled of salt and damp wood, a familiar scent that reminded me of childhood, of lazy afternoons spent with Mom in this very town, hearing June's soft laughter from the kitchen as they sipped tea and traded stories about their youth. June's house was a little cottage on the edge of town, tucked behind a few wild rose bushes and a picket fence that had seen better days. It wasn't much, small, weathered, and cozy, but it had always felt warm and welcoming. I knocked lightly on the door, the faintest tremor in my hand. June had always been kind to me, even when I was a kid, even when I felt like I didn't belong anywhere else. The door opened with a soft creak, and June stood there in her thick cardigan, her gray hair tucked into a loose bun. Her eyes, always sharp, softened when they landed on me, and she smiled. "Maya, darling, what brings you here on a morning like this?" Her voice was warm, but there was a tiredness in her eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before. I stepped inside, the familiar smell of old books and herbal tea surrounding me, a little overwhelming. The house was cramped with shelves and piles of books, some stacked high in towers, others spilling over onto the floor. The smell of dust was thick, mixed with the faint scent of cat fur. June's cat had always been a mystery to me, slipping in and out of rooms without a sound. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice low, "about Mom." Her expression faltered, just for a moment. She didn't say anything at first, only led me to the small, worn couch in the living room. It was covered in thick blankets, the kind Mom would have knitted. "I figured something was troubling you, Maya. Come on, sit." As I settled in, I felt the weight of her gaze on me. Her house, once a sanctuary of warmth, now felt more like a place of secrets. I noticed the flicker in her eyes, a nervousness just below the surface, and it unsettled me. "I know things aren't easy for you," June began after a pause, pouring tea into a chipped mug. "Your mom, she regretted a lot, Maya. I'm sure you know that." I nodded, my heart tightening. June had been Mom's oldest friend, the kind of person who could finish her sentences and knew every little detail of her life. I needed her to tell me more, to help me understand why Mom had left everything to me. June continued, "She always felt guilty about you and Emily, about how she treated you, about the favoritism, the way she put Emily first." Her voice trailed off as if the words were too heavy. "She didn't know how to make it right." The room felt colder now, despite the warmth of the tea. The quiet, too, was suffocating. I swallowed hard. "And the key?" June didn't look at me immediately. She placed the teapot down slowly, as if gathering her thoughts. Then she pulled a small key from her pocket and handed it to me. "This belongs to something in the house," she said softly. "Something important. Something your mom wanted you to have." My fingers closed around the cold metal, and for a moment the world seemed to still. This was it, the key, the thing that might unlock the answers I needed. But as I held it, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. There was something off about June's eyes, something that flickered and darted when she spoke. It was small, just a brief hesitation before she'd look away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her cardigan. It didn't sit right. "June," I began, my voice trembling despite my attempt to steady it. "You said she regretted a lot, but why didn't she tell me herself?" She met my gaze then, her face softening. "She was afraid, Maya. Afraid you'd never understand." I swallowed hard. The words didn't seem to fit together. June had always been so open with me. Why the secrecy now? "Did she leave anything else for me?" I asked, my voice small. June's fingers tightened around the rim of her mug, her knuckles pale. "Your mom left behind what she could, Maya, but she had her reasons. She thought you'd be better off without some of it." Her eyes flicked to the window, her gaze distant. I felt my breath catch. "You knew about the deed, didn't you? The one for the property downtown?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her hand slid into her pocket, and she tugged something small and shiny from within. Mom's locket, the one that had been missing from the house. My heart stopped. I stared at the locket in her hand, the chain still tangled the way it had been when I'd last seen it, resting on the side table in the house. How had June come to have it? She seemed to notice my shock and quickly tucked the locket back into her pocket. "I found it at the house, Maya. I was cleaning up some things and—" "No," I cut in, the words rushing out. "You didn't find it. You took it." She flinched, her eyes darting away from mine. I saw it then, the way her hand trembled when she reached for her cup, the way her lips pressed together in a tight line. She was hiding something. "I didn't take it," she said quietly, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I swear, Maya, I never meant to keep it from you. But there's something you don't know." I stood up, the key still cold in my palm, my mind racing. I had wanted answers, but this only raised more questions. What was June hiding? What had Mom truly left behind for me? June's kind, I thought to myself, but her eyes hide something. I looked at her one last time, the unease settling deeper in my chest. Whatever secrets she was keeping, they weren't just about the past. They were about the future, and about me. "Thanks for the key," I said, my voice tight, "but I need to think." I turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind me. The fog outside had thickened again, pressing in like a heavy curtain, hiding everything just beyond my reach. I held the key in my palm, the cold metal biting into my skin. What did it unlock? And why did I feel like June was the one keeping me from finding out? The attic felt suffocating, heavy with dust and years of silence. I stood there, the cold iron key pressed against my palm, my fingers trembling in anticipation. I had come this far, unlocked the secrets that had been hidden for years, and yet my breath caught in my throat, reluctant to dive deeper into the unknown. The box, ancient and weathered, groaned as I lifted its lid. Dust swirled in the dim light, the air thick with the scent of old wood and neglect. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I found. Amid the yellowed papers at the very bottom of the box, a small leather-bound diary caught my eye. Mom's diary. My heart raced, but my hands felt numb as I reached for it. It was heavier than I expected. Every inch of the worn cover was soaked with time. The creases in the leather, the edges frayed from constant handling, all told a story I hadn't been ready to face. I hesitated, the weight of it too much to bear. This was the thing that would either set me free or tear me apart completely. I opened it slowly, the pages crackling with each turn. Mom's handwriting, familiar yet foreign, filled the pages. The ink had faded over the years, some words shaky and rushed. But one phrase stood out, etched in a way that burned into my mind. "I took Maya's money for Emily's debts. She'll never forgive me." I froze. My heart dropped. The words hit me like a slap to the face. My own mother had stolen from me, stolen my savings, the money I had worked for and dreamed of using to build a better life. She had taken it all to pay off Emily's debts. Tears filled my eyes, blurring the ink on the page. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All those years of pretending everything was fine, that my mother cared about me, were a lie. Everything she'd said to me, everything she'd promised, it was all a mask. She had used me, my money, to cover up Emily's mistakes. The words in the diary burned into my skin, each one a reminder of the betrayals I'd faced. "You'll never amount to much, Maya," Mom used to say. All this time, I thought it was just her tough love, but it was more than that. It was manipulation. It was control. I turned the page, hoping for some kind of redemption, but there was none. Emily knew about the land. She convinced me to sell it for profit. She told me it was the only way. The blood drained from my face. Emily had known. She wasn't the victim I'd always thought she was. She had been behind this all along, pulling the strings, manipulating our mother, forcing her to sell the land, our family's legacy, for money. Not because we needed it, but because Emily saw it as an opportunity for herself. The anger surged through me, hot and raw, the sting of betrayal more than I could bear. It wasn't just Mom I had to forgive. It was Emily, too. My own sister, the one I had tried to protect, had torn everything apart. She had used me as a pawn in her game. Just as the tears began to blur my vision again, a sound broke through the thick silence. A car engine, distant at first, but unmistakable. My heart leapt into my throat, my pulse quickening. I didn't need to see outside to know who it was. The rumble of a car on gravel was all too familiar. Emily was back. The sound of the engine grew louder, like a storm rolling in, and my legs felt like lead. I couldn't move. I pushed the diary aside, my body trembling as I stood up. The truth had come out, but now I was faced with the reality of it. How could I face her? How could I stand in front of Emily after everything she had done to me? The car's engine was loud now, thundering in the attic, echoing in my chest. I pressed my hand to my heart, hoping it would calm down, but it only seemed to speed up. I couldn't hide anymore. I had to confront her. I had to confront the sister who had taken everything from me, from our family. I took a deep breath and started down the stairs. My feet felt heavy, each step feeling like an eternity. The house groaned under my weight, and the silence in the air felt suffocating. The sound of the tires on gravel echoed in my head as I made my way to the door. Halfway down the stairs, I froze. The car had stopped. Emily was here. I stopped in my tracks. I had the diary in my hand, but it felt heavier than ever. The truth had been laid bare in front of me, but I wasn't ready to face the woman who had torn my life apart. But there was no choice. I had to face her. I stepped down the rest of the stairs, my pulse pounding in my ears. The door to the living room was just ahead, the faintest light from the outside creeping in. I could hear Emily's footsteps on the porch, each one deliberate, each one closer. My breath caught in my throat, my hand cold as I reached for the door handle. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs. I had to open the door. I had to confront her. But before I could turn the handle, I heard it. The faintest sound of the door opening from the other side. Emily was here. I could feel the tension in the air the moment Emily stormed through the door, her heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor. She didn't even knock, just barged in, as if she owned the place. The storm outside was growing stronger, the wind howling, rattling the windows as if nature itself was echoing the chaos in my chest. She barely looked at me before speaking. "I know about the land, Maya. I know everything, and I want what's mine." Her words cut through me like a blade. She knew about the inheritance, and now she was demanding it. It wasn't enough for her to have everything already. Now she wanted the last piece of the puzzle, the land that Mom had sold without my knowledge, without my consent. I stood frozen, too stunned to speak, but inside my blood was boiling. Emily stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. "You're going to share it with me? As sisters." The way she said sisters made my skin crawl, as if the word itself was a weapon, something to use against me. My breath caught in my throat, but I forced myself to respond, my voice low and steady. "No." She smirked, the cruelty in her smile sending a chill down my spine. "No?" she echoed, almost amused. "You don't understand, Maya. You have no choice. The land was never yours to keep. It's mine, too." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I couldn't let it show. Not yet. I had to keep control. I had to stand my ground. "You can't just take what's mine," I said, my voice shaking with both fear and defiance. She leaned in closer, her breath cold on my face. "You don't know who I hired to take it, do you?" My heart stopped. I felt the weight of her words sink in like a stone. A hired goon. She'd gone that far. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She was willing to do anything to get what she wanted. The anger and fear were swirling inside me, a storm in their own right. My chest felt tight as I fought to hold back the tears to keep my composure, but the fear was there, lingering, gnawing at me. "I'm not giving you anything," I said, trying to sound confident, but my voice cracked, betraying the terror I was feeling. Emily took a step back, a laugh escaping her lips, cold and hollow. "You'll regret that." I watched as she turned away, striding toward the living room. I couldn't let her go on like this, not after everything. But before I could say anything more, she was already rummaging through the clutter, papers, old books, photographs, like she was searching for something to make her claim stronger. My heart pounded as I watched her move, each step she took only fueling my growing sense of dread. I turned away quickly, rushing toward the hallway. My mind raced as I tried to find somewhere to hide, somewhere to think. My breath came fast as I reached the bedroom and slammed the door shut behind me. The lock clicked into place, but the sound didn't comfort me. Inside the room, the shadows danced on the walls, the flickering light from the hallway making them seem alive. The house groaned and creaked in the storm, but all I could hear was the sound of Emily moving downstairs. Her footsteps were sharp and deliberate, each one more menacing than the last. I could hear her tearing through the house, opening drawers, flipping through books, searching for something, anything. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest. I couldn't hide forever. I had to face her. I had to confront her, but I wasn't ready for what she had become. She was no longer the sister I once knew. She was a monster, driven by greed and hatred, willing to destroy everything in her path to get what she wanted. I glanced over at the bed, where Mom's locket rested on the nightstand. The silver chain glimmered faintly in the dim light. I crossed the room quickly, picking it up and holding it tightly in my hand. It was the only thing left of Mom that still felt real, the only piece of her that hadn't been tainted by lies. The locket seemed to give me strength. I could feel the warmth of it in my palm, and for a moment I closed my eyes, imagining Mom's arms around me. It was a small comfort, but it was something. I moved to the window and peeked through the curtains, my breath fogging up the glass. I could see Emily's shadow moving in the yard outside. The storm had turned the night into a blur of rain and wind, but I could still make out her silhouette, pacing back and forth. It was then that I noticed something. The shadows moving inside the house weren't just from Emily. There was someone else, a figure standing just outside the window, watching. I froze, my blood running cold. Who else had she brought here? Who else was in on this? The tension in my body reached its breaking point. I wasn't safe. I wasn't even sure I could trust myself anymore, let alone Emily. The uncertainty, the dread, everything felt like it was closing in. I took a deep breath and turned away from the window. I couldn't let fear control me. I couldn't let her win. "She's a monster," I whispered under my breath. "I won't let her win." I had to make a stand. But what if it was too late? The rain was coming down in sheets as I gripped the steering wheel, the wipers struggling to clear the water from my windshield. The roads of Maine stretched out ahead of me, endless and slick with rain. The storm outside felt like a mirror to the chaos inside my head, my thoughts spinning faster than the tires on the wet road. I called June as soon as I could, my voice shaky. "I'm on my way to Ethan's office. You were right. I need answers." Her voice was steady, but there was an underlying tension in her words. "Be careful, Maya. There's more going on here than you know. If something's wrong, Ethan might be the only one who can help you, but be careful. Not everything is as it seems." I didn't have the luxury of doubting her now. Whatever June knew, whatever Ethan was about to tell me, it was time to find out the truth. I could feel the weight of the locket in my pocket, the cold metal pressing against my thigh, as if it were reminding me of everything I stood to lose. When I pulled into the parking lot of Ethan's office, I barely noticed the howling wind or the flashing neon sign. All I could focus on was the storm brewing inside me. I could feel the anxiety rising in my chest, the anticipation of facing the next piece of the puzzle. The door creaked open as I stepped inside Ethan's cluttered office. The space was a mess. Papers strewn across the floor, an old fan in the corner whirring softly, its blades moving lazily in the humid air. Ethan sat at his desk, his glasses perched on the edge of his nose as he shuffled through papers. He didn't look up when I entered, but I could feel his gaze on me, sharp and calculating. "Maya," he said without looking up, his voice tired but kind. "I've been expecting you." I swallowed hard, stepping further into the room. "June said you could help me. I need answers about the will. I need to know what happened to Mom's land." Ethan sighed, setting the papers down and finally meeting my gaze. "You're not going to like what I have to say." He gestured for me to sit, and I did, my fingers tightening around the locket in my pocket. His office smelled like old paper and stale coffee, and despite the storm outside, the room felt too hot, too stuffy, as if it were holding something back. "I've gone through the documents," Ethan continued, his voice low. "The will's legitimate, but there's something you need to know. There's a clause in the will, a guardian clause." I frowned. "A guardian clause? What does that mean?" Ethan hesitated, his hands tapping the desk nervously. "It means that someone else is controlling the land, someone outside of you and Emily. I don't know who, but they're tied to the inheritance. The land belongs to them, too. I can't say much more for now, but this guardian is involved." A cold shiver ran down my spine. My mind reeled. A guardian? Who could it be? Emily? Had she been involved with someone else? Had she manipulated someone into controlling everything? I was about to ask more questions when I noticed something out of place. Files scattered on the edge of the desk, a few papers half hidden beneath them. The edges were crumpled, the ink smudged, as if someone had rifled through them in a hurry. I pointed to the mess. "What happened to those documents?" Ethan's face paled. "They were tampered with. Someone went through them, but I can't figure out who. I've been keeping the real documents under lock and key, but someone's been trying to cover their tracks." I could feel my heart race. Someone had been here, someone who knew more than they were letting on. My mind was filled with questions, and a part of me was terrified to know the answers. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling, "who's the guardian? What do you know about them?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I wish I could tell you more. I really do. But this isn't something I can explain right now. It's too dangerous. You're better off not knowing for now." I could feel my patience slipping away. "I don't care about the danger. I need the truth. I need to know who's pulling the strings behind all of this." Ethan leaned forward, his voice urgent. "You need to be careful, Maya. Whoever this guardian is, they have more power than you think. And if you dig too deep, you could end up getting hurt." The words hung in the air, heavy with warning. I couldn't let fear stop me now. I had to know who was responsible for all of this. Emily's betrayal, the land, the hidden guardian. It was all connected, and I needed to piece it together before it was too late. I stood up abruptly, the locket pressing painfully against my chest. "Thank you, Ethan, but I'm not backing down. I'll find out who's behind this." Ethan's eyes narrowed as I turned to leave. "Be careful, Maya. This isn't just about the land. It's about something much bigger, and if you're not careful, you'll end up in over your head." The door closed behind me with a soft click, and I stepped out into the rain. The streets of Maine were slick, the wet pavement glistening beneath the streetlights. But even with the storm raging, my thoughts were clouded by one question. Who was the guardian, and how far were they willing to go to keep their secret hidden? The rain had been relentless, falling in torrents that seemed to drown the world around me. Each drop that hit the ground felt like a drumbeat echoing the chaos in my heart. The scent of wet earth and pine trees mingled with the air, heavy with the storm's fury. I stood on Grandma's porch, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath me as I gazed into the soaked streets. The storm outside matched the storm brewing within me, chaotic, uncertain, and overwhelming. Everything felt suffocating, and yet, in some strange way, it felt still, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I gripped the diary in my hand, my fingers trembling as I flipped through its pages, the ink blotting slightly where the storm's moisture had found its way through the old leather. The familiar scent of paper mixed with the musty air, but I could barely focus on anything but the note I had found earlier. The words that haunted me. The guardian will keep Maya in check. The phrase echoed in my mind. Who was this guardian? A stranger? A lawyer? Someone with the power to control everything that had happened to me? The question lingered in my mind like a weight I couldn't shake. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the rain fill my ears, trying to steady my racing thoughts. My heart hammered against my chest, and with each beat, the realization hit harder. If Emily wasn't the one in control, then who was? A stranger was pulling the strings. But who were they? How had they gotten involved? My suspicions grew deeper with every passing second. Emily. Was she truly a victim here? Or had she been the one manipulating everything from the start? My mind raced with the idea that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the mastermind behind all this. Perhaps she had been used just as I had. But then, there were the questions, so many of them. The more I thought about it, the less sure I became of who was truly in control of the situation. I could feel the weight of the locket in my pocket, pressing against my skin like it was meant to remind me of everything I had lost. I pulled it out, the cool metal cold in my hand. The storm raged on, but I felt a sense of stillness in the midst of it, the locket almost glowing in the dim light of the evening. I opened it carefully, the hinges creaking as I gazed at the photo inside. The picture of Mom and me, so young, so full of promise, stared back at me. It was a photo I had seen countless times, but now, with everything that had happened, it felt different. The edges of the picture were curling, worn with time, just like the memories I had of Mom. I could still see the love in her eyes, the way she had looked at me back then. But now it was all a distant dream, a dream I couldn't hold on to anymore. Tears blurred my vision as I stared at the photo, the ache in my chest growing with every passing second. The love I thought I had known, the love I had longed for, had been shattered by her actions. She had stolen from me, used me as a pawn in her own game, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. I had spent so long fighting to earn her love, and now it felt like nothing more than a cruel illusion. The anger bubbled up inside me, hot and bitter. I wiped my tears away angrily, clutching the locket tightly in my hand. I couldn't let myself be consumed by grief. I had to keep moving forward. I had to find the truth, no matter how painful it was. No more hiding from the truth, no more running away. I would confront Emily, confront my family, and demand the answers I deserved. I took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of rain and pine, and stepped off the porch. The storm battered the ground, but I felt a strange sense of calm in the chaos. The sound of the rain pounding against the roof above me was deafening, but it only made my resolve stronger. I was ready to face whatever came next. The storm outside couldn't compare to the storm inside of me. It was nothing but a reflection of my own emotions, a mirror of the turmoil I had been feeling for so long. I couldn't stand there, lost in memories and questions. I had to act. Emily's betrayal, my mother's lies, they couldn't go unanswered any longer. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became. I would confront them, all of them. I had to know the truth. Who was the guardian? Was Emily really just a pawn? Or had she been the mastermind all along? And what role had my mother played in all of this? I needed answers, and I needed them now. The locket, still warm in my hand, was a symbol of everything I had lost, and everything I had to fight for. The photo inside was a reminder of a time before everything went wrong. But I couldn't keep holding on to the past. I had to face the future, no matter how terrifying it seemed. As I walked toward the street, the rain continued to pour, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The storm outside no longer had a hold on me. It was time to find the truth, no matter what it took. I was ready to confront the family, ready to confront Emily, and I was ready to uncover the mystery of the guardian. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't backing down. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut through. My heart pounded, my grip tightening around the diary in my hands. I had called this family gathering with one purpose in mind: to finally confront the truth. No more hiding, no more lies. The truth had been buried for far too long, and I wasn't going to let it stay there anymore. Grandma's old living room felt smaller now, crowded with relatives who had no idea what was about to unfold. The faint smell of aging wood and the soft creak of the floorboards beneath us only added to the heaviness in the air. Outside, the sky was dark, the rain still falling in sheets. It felt as though the storm had followed me inside, as if everything was leading up to this moment. I stood before them, feeling the weight of their gazes on me. Emily was sitting near the back, her posture stiff and tense, as if she knew exactly what was coming. I could see the fear in her eyes, but she was doing her best to hide it with that signature practice smile. It was almost sickening to watch her pretend to be calm. With a deep breath, I opened the diary to the page I had read so many times. The ink was still fresh in my mind, the words that had shaken me to my core. Emily convinced me she'd manage the land better, I read aloud, my voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of fury. I took Maya's money for Emily's debts. She'll never forgive me. The room fell silent. I could feel the air shift, the weight of the words hanging over us all. I glanced at Emily, watching her face pale as the truth began to sink in. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could see her hands trembling slightly, her eyes darting from me to the others in the room. "Mom was protecting you," she blurted out, her voice shaking. The words seemed desperate, as if she were trying to salvage something, anything from the wreckage. But the damage was done. The lies had been exposed. Whispers broke out around the room. Family members exchanged confused, shocked glances, their faces etched with disbelief. It was as though the ground had shifted beneath them. Emily's carefully crafted facade was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I stood there, holding the locket in my hand, the cold metal pressing against my palm. The faint glow of its surface caught the light from the window, a subtle reminder of everything I had lost and everything I was fighting for. Mom's betrayal stung, but it was the anger that burned the hottest within me now. The truth had been stolen from me, and I wasn't going to let Emily get away with it any longer. Emily's face twisted, her eyes narrowing as she shot me a venomous glare. "You don't understand," she spat. "Mom didn't want you to be hurt. She was trying to protect you." Her words were hollow, and I could see right through them. She had manipulated Mom, twisted her into doing what she wanted. And now she was trying to turn everything around, make it look like she was the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I took a step forward, my voice steady, but my heart was racing. "Mom trusted you," I said, the words thick with emotion. "She named you the guardian, but you didn't protect me. You took from me. You took everything." Emily recoiled slightly, as if my words had physically struck her, but she quickly recovered, standing up straighter, putting on her mask once more. "You're wrong," she said, her voice cold, but there was a tremor in it. "I was doing what was best for the family." I could feel the weight of her lies in the air, but it no longer mattered. The truth had come to light, and it was more than I could have ever imagined. My mother had betrayed me, and Emily had been the mastermind behind it all, but I wasn't going to let them control me any longer. The room felt suffocating as the realization sank in. My relatives were looking at Emily differently now, their eyes no longer filled with the same trust they had once had. But that wasn't enough. I needed more than just the truth to set me free. I needed to take action. I turned to the others, the locket still clutched tightly in my hand. "I'm done being invisible," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I'm not going to let them get away with this. I'm going to take back what's mine." I could see the shock on their faces, the murmurs of surprise and concern, but it didn't matter. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let Emily's manipulation continue. I was going to hire Ethan, the lawyer, and take legal action. The land was mine, and I would fight for it, no matter the cost. As I stood there, the weight of the locket in my hand, I realized something. This wasn't just about the land anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. It was about making sure that no one could control me again, not even my own family. Emily's hateful glare burned into me, but I didn't flinch. This time, I wasn't backing down. The truth had been exposed, and now it was time to make it right. No matter what it took, I was going to reclaim what was mine. The ocean's waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, their steady roar grounding me as I sat by the window of my new seaside home. The court had ruled in my favor. Emily's guardianship was finally nullified, and the land, my land, was mine again. Free of her manipulation, I could finally take control of my life. The weight of Mom's locket in my palm was both familiar and foreign, like an old wound that never fully healed. The metal, cool against my skin, caught the faint light of the setting sun. For a moment I stared at it, feeling the weight of the past wash over me. I had always wondered how something so small could hold so much meaning. Now it felt like a bittersweet reminder of everything I'd endured and everything that still weighed on me. The land that had once torn my family apart now had a purpose. It would fund the youth writing center I'd always dreamed of. My dream, finally a reality. It wasn't just about the land anymore. It was about creating something meaningful for others. A space where young voices could be heard, where they could find their way through the power of words. This was what I had always hoped for, a fresh start in a world that had been filled with betrayal and pain. June was with me, helping me run the center. Her presence was a grounding force in this new life I was building. I was still adjusting, still feeling the pull of the past, but with her by my side, it didn't feel so daunting. She had been there for me when I'd discovered the truth about Emily, supporting me through the hardest moments. Her quiet strength had been the steady anchor I needed to keep moving forward. I watched the kids at the center, their eyes alight with excitement as they gathered around the table, sharing stories, their words spilling out like they were finally finding the space to breathe. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was a part of something bigger than myself. These kids had so much potential, so much to offer the world, and I was helping them discover it. It was more than I ever could have hoped for, and yet something inside me still felt incomplete. Even as I built something real, I couldn't escape the shadow of the past. The betrayal Emily had caused still stung, lingering like a bruise I couldn't quite heal. She had never apologized, and part of me wasn't sure if I would ever be able to forgive her, no matter how much time passed. The hurt, the betrayal, the shattered trust, it was all still there, festering in the quiet corners of my mind. I sat by the window, staring out at the ocean, the locket still clutched in my hand. The sky was darkening, and the waves seemed to pull me in with their rhythm, reminding me that life, like the sea, was beautiful but unforgiving. I had come so far, but the past, especially Emily's betrayal, wasn't something I could simply erase. The ocean, vast and endless, felt like a mirror to my thoughts. So much to process, so much still unresolved. "Are you okay?" June's voice broke through my thoughts. I hadn't even heard her approach. I turned to find her standing behind me, her expression soft and understanding. "You're stronger than you know, Maya," she said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that I had moved on, that the past no longer had a hold on me. But it wasn't that simple. Emily's shadow still clung to me. Every time I thought I was free of it, it crept back in, reminding me of the lies, the hurt, and the betrayal. I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to forgive her, not without an apology, not without some acknowledgement of the damage she had caused. "I've built something real, June," I whispered, the weight of my words heavy in the air. "But the past still haunts me. I don't know if I can ever truly let it go." June didn't answer right away. She just stood there, her hand still on my shoulder, offering the kind of quiet support that only she could. She didn't try to fix me or tell me I should be over it. She just let me sit with it. She understood that healing wasn't something that could be rushed. I looked down at the locket again, the photo of Mom and me staring back at me. The love in her eyes was still there, but now it felt like a distant memory, something I couldn't quite reach. Everything had changed, and maybe that was okay. Maybe I needed to learn how to carry both the love I'd once felt and the pain of her betrayal. But for now, I wasn't ready to let go of the past, even if I knew that moving forward meant confronting it. The waves outside continued to crash, steady and constant. It used to fill me with a sense of longing, a sense that something was missing. But now, the sound brought peace. I had reclaimed my life, my dream, and even though the past still haunted me, I wasn't afraid anymore. I had a purpose now, and that in itself was enough. The center, the ocean, June, they were all part of something new, a future that was mine and mine alone, a future where I could take back what I had lost and build something meaningful. But as much as I had found peace in this new beginning, I knew that the past would always linger, just beyond my reach. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. With one last glance at the ocean, I stood up, my hand still holding the locket, and walked toward the writing center. There was still work to do, still a future to shape, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what that future held. The sun had almost disappeared beneath the horizon, leaving behind a soft glow that spread across the ocean, casting long shadows on the sand. I stood there, letting the sound of the crashing waves fill my ears as I gazed out at the endless stretch of water before me. The salty air clung to my skin, and the cool wind tugged at my hair, reminding me how far I'd come and how much more there was to face. I was standing on the edge of something new, something I had fought so hard to build, yet my heart felt heavy with unresolved pain. The writing center was flourishing. June, with her constant support, had become the family I never had, and the kids we were helping were finding their voices, their own stories unfolding in ways I had never imagined. I felt a deep sense of purpose now, something I hadn't felt in so long. The land, once a symbol of betrayal and loss, was now funding something that could change lives. It was a victory in so many ways, but as I stood there, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what I had lost, what had been taken from me by the people I trusted most. My fingers gently caressed the surface of Mom's locket, the cold metal a constant reminder of everything that had happened. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It held memories, secrets, and yes, pain. I could still remember the look in her eyes, that brief flicker of love before everything changed. I closed my eyes for a moment, the wind whistling around me, and tried to imagine what it would have been like if things had turned out differently. If I had been able to trust her, if Emily had never lied, if we hadn't all been torn apart by greed and betrayal. The sound of the waves seemed to grow louder, crashing against the shore as if to drown out my thoughts. I wondered again if there was more to discover. Could there be another letter from Mom hidden somewhere? Another secret she had kept from me? Another piece of this complicated puzzle I still couldn't fully understand. It felt as if there was always something just out of reach, something I hadn't uncovered yet. I thought about what I had learned through all of this. Family isn't always safe. Sometimes it's the ones closest to you who hurt you the most. But I had found something even more powerful than family, my own worth. I had learned that I didn't need to depend on anyone else to define me. I had built this life from the ground up, with my own hands, and that was something no one could take away from me. Still, the ocean stretched out before me, vast and unending. Its rhythm, steady and constant, mirrored the way I felt. I had come so far, but the past still lingered in the back of my mind. Could I ever fully let go of the betrayal? Could I forgive Emily, even without an apology? I didn't know, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The future was mine, and it wasn't defined by my past. The locket in my hand reminded me of everything I had lost, but also everything I had gained. I heard footsteps behind me, soft and steady. June was there, standing quietly by my side. Without a word, she placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me, offering the kind of silent support I had come to rely on. "You're stronger than you know, Maya," she said softly. Her words were simple, but they felt like a lifeline. I turned to face her, my heart full of gratitude and something deeper, something that felt like hope. I wasn't alone anymore. And even though the past still haunted me, even though I didn't know if I could ever forgive Emily, I was building something real, something lasting. "I've built something real, June," I said, my voice steady, despite the weight of everything I had been through. "But the past still haunts me. I don't know if I can ever truly let it go." She smiled, her eyes full of understanding. She didn't tell me what to do, didn't give me any quick fixes. She just let me be, offering the comfort of knowing that it was okay to still be in the process of healing. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to forgive everyone or forget what had happened. I just needed to keep moving forward. I glanced at the locket one last time, the photo of Mom and me inside, the love in her eyes still so vivid, yet so far removed from everything that had come after. Maybe, in time, I could reconcile that love with the pain. But for now, I had something new to focus on: my future, the writing center, the kids who looked up to me. The waves continued to crash, steady and eternal. I didn't have all the answers, but I was finally okay with that. I had fought for my life, for my happiness, and that was enough. The sun had disappeared completely, and the beach was bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The future stretched out before me, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to walk toward it. Have you ever fought a family betrayal? Have you ever had to reclaim your life after everything was taken from you? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe for more real stories of triumph. Let's keep this conversation going because we're not alone in our struggles.